I would like to invite our former program manager, our former teacher, our current teacher, our mentor, Brigadier General retired, Star Carey.
You ready? All together.
You want to see both?
One will do. I want to see it. Okay. Who else? Hank? No, that's not an ID card. Come on, that's not the same thing. Thank you, sir. Okay. That was always a rule, wasn't it? So that we never forgot for whom we were working. Let's start with the questions. What was the building number?
1460.
1469. Yep. It was a mess hall. We've already heard about that. My office was over the grease pit. Yep, that's right. We already talked about Sullivan. Oh, what were the engineer students marching by with?
Generators.
Briefcases. Don't you remember that? They were in formation with briefcases. Well, how did rain affect the communications? Right, in the afternoon. I remember the first afternoon I was there, I went outside to talk to the crew, and I said that the phone's not working. And they said, yeah, because it's raining. And that was perfectly natural. It was okay. The rain never didn't do it like that. So, the part on the car. What did Colonel Sullivan say he was? The brakes. What did I say I was? I was the hood ornament. And there was the only thing that was worthwhile on that whole 3 days. What a complete waste of time it was, because of the guys that were there and they weren't not qualified. But I got thinking about it, and hood ornament is exactly what a PM ought to be. That is, you're out in front, you're the symbol of the organization, and you don't really do anything. So neat. All right, why is it we stayed south of the Beltway? Who? No, it was Christine. We had the sights on one place, who was my secretary, and it was right where the loop was at 95, and just on the northwest corner there was a new office building, absolutely beautiful. And I went over, looked at it, and I came back and said, oh, Christine, we got to go there. She said, you got to be south of the loop. I said, it's right there. She said, you go north of the loop and I leave. And I'm saying, we're going south of the loop. She was all I cared about it. I'm sorry, folks, but I really needed her. Then, what happened at that last meeting that caused it to break up? Do you remember that last meeting? It was awful. They came in, and I was sitting at a table. See, I wasn't presenting. They were, and General Ward, somebody had made up this document that said that we had to live by the following rules. Now, I can't tell you what the rules were. I don't remember them well enough. But it was things like, if you have to report to us the number of people that are not on time on a daily basis. It was that kind of pettiness. And that meeting just broke right down. I don't know if you remember that, but it got bad in there. And so you had Bill Clark, Assistant Secretary of the Army, Manpower and Reserve Affairs, and General Ward were the co-chairs. And it got so bad that the next day there was a memo from Bill Clark saying the GOSC is hereby disbanded. Good man. Oh, number 6. What did he say when I said he reports that what we do? He said to me, you know, because I know how I was about the schedule. And he said to me finally, he said, why are you so upset about staying on schedule? None of our programs are on schedule. And number 7. When see, they wanted a schedule from us. They wanted an exact schedule. And I was saying things like, oh, something will be done in the late fall. And they didn't want that. They wanted exact dates, 2 years and 3 years away. I said, you can't do that sort of stuff. And so that meeting broke down. And what had happened was, okay, you're not going to have a schedule. So the DIS C4 went to Isaiah and said, you're going to come up with a schedule. Isaiah did, and brought it to the meeting, gave it to DIS C4, and DIS C4 presented it as though that was going to be the Army schedule imposed on us. And Charles stood up to him And he said, we haven't even looked at this. We can't comment on this. We don't know that it's any good. And there were some really tough times in there. And finally, General Harris cleared the room. Said, all you people out. We all had to go outside. And there was some discussion inside. And I will tell you now about the lieutenant colonels that I had carefully placed throughout the Pentagon, and one of my agents was in there at the time, and came back and told us later that the decision was that they had made was that they were going to get us all fired, and they were going to get started all over again. And then this lieutenant colonel said, you do that, Congress is going to have a fit. They're on budget. They're on schedule. They're doing the job. You're going to fire them? What was Plan B? That's right. There was no Plan B. There was nothing in the hip pocket. There was nothing that was going to happen except, you know what? True or false? Yes, Sandy was called up for Desert Storm. Yes, she was not the only wife. And number 11 is also true. We did form a little support group and discussed things like domestic chores. So you answered true to all of them, didn't you? Good. Why did I bring in the Army Audit Agency? Ha!
We knew we were going to be audited anyway, so you wanted them right there in the middle of the PMO to observe us.
You pick your auditors, right? Uh-huh, right. You see, if AAA is in there, there's a code here between the auditors. And if AAA is doing something, GAO won't come in. Those thieves do have honor. So if AAA is there, and they're there all the time, GAO will be stopped. And I know, because of the sources that I had, that 2 general officers and 1 SES went to a member of Congress that they know well enough to ask them to initiate a GAO. And the 3 tried, and GAO turned them down on the 3 cases that I know of. There may have been more, but on all 3. Now, why did I have them in the middle of the room? So you hear everything. You put them off to the side, and they're going to say, oh, something happened we didn't know about. They were right in the middle. They heard every one of our conversations. We had no secrets. Ha. That works so well. The 3 most important letters.
Fun, fun, fun.
No. Really? Come on. Oh, you're going to hate yourselves. Fully funded and fenced.
Oh, those 3.
Oh, those 3. Oh. No, it's not true that generals may determine, so yes, so the answer is no. Why is it that since it's not true that generals can wear anything they want to, why is it nobody ever said anything to me? We would have the meetings. Right? I'd be up on stage, and I would sit down on stage, and I'd cross my legs like that, and you could see the boots, and you see all this buzzing going on. He's wearing boots. Damn, right? Because half the people thought it was fun, and the other half of the people were wimps. You can tell them I said that, can't you, Bruce? I already told him. Oh, yes. Now, this was fun. So we had you over. Some people came Monday, some came Tuesday, some came Wednesday. But what was the Thursday group? They were the ones that could not make it Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, so Christine called it the makeup party. Remember? We had a makeup party. I love that. So if you were Thursday, well, I'm sorry if you were Thursday. But now, I don't remember the answer to 19. There was something.
Shredder.
The guy claimed we. Oh, the guy said we didn't have a shredder, and he ended up catching his tie in the shredder he claimed we didn't have. That's right.
Dave Gallagher.
Oh, really? Yeah. Ah. Oh, whoa. The one that was the, we were having a building inspection, and there was no ashtray there. And so we had to go out and get an ashtray, even though we were in a non-smoking building, government building, didn't matter what the rules were. The number 21, of course, was a smoking area out in back. Oh, 22 was so much fun. One of you guys set up one of our temporary folks to come in and ask me to put in the smoking area a roof out there so that you'd be protected from the rain. See? And I could see the person, and there was Larry Lutz through the window, and I think Larry set him up. See? So there was the guy, and he comes in, poor man, you talk about the sacrificial lamb. And I said, you know, I thought, that's a great idea. We need to protect our smokers. And while we're at it, let's put in a bar for the alcoholics. And, he said, never mind. I'll bet you don't remember Mark 2000. This was one of the things that I had in the back. This is what I was afraid of. I thought we were going to be moving along with the RCAS, and at some point they were going to put in a change order that would require us to miss schedule. And if we were going to miss schedule, I was not going to say the RCAS missed schedule. I was going to change the name of the program. And so I announced that to a few people in advance. Now, Mark stood for mobilization and automation of the reserve components. I loved it. Mark, and then 2000, because that's when we were about there. I just thought it was great. Well, a certain general was so upset with that he spent 2 weeks in a staff study on how to prove to the rest of the Army that Mark 2000 could never be possible. And that kept that general occupied for 2 weeks. You got to give them busy. They can't just be sitting around. Then the overhead projector, of course, was Starship Enterprise. And number 25 was I had the building swept during the source selection process because I was concerned that maybe some things are going on. Okay, now we have the responses that you did to the questionnaire, and I'll respond to some of them. The first one was, how did you convince Isaiah Management to co-locate the acquisition team with the PMO? They, of course, didn't want to do it. Their standard was always to keep them in their own office. And what you do is if you want something and you're a program manager, you must be a puppy dog. If a puppy dog wants something, wants to be petted, then the puppy will grab onto your pant leg and not let go. And you can do that like that and just go, you won't let go. I never let go. Everywhere I went, I need to have the contracting officer in the building. I said it calmly, easy going, but I need it. Every week. I just kept saying it. They got tired of her, of hearing it, and here comes Mary. So I never convinced them. They were forced to send her to us, and I'm so glad that happened. Why were there so few bathrooms in the build-out plans? Dick Knapp designed the building, and he will, that's a chief's job.
Before we got in the car.
But what I do remember is the comments on our building in 1469, and I asked about that, what people thought of it, and they said one of the problems was so many of the men were using the ladies' room in 1469. Does anybody remember that? Because we had mostly women. I don't know why that was true. All right, that was the comment I got. Why did we have a workout room when there was no time to work out? Well, I remember what I told you. If you're in the workout room, you're working. If you're in the library, you're working. So if you didn't work out, that was your fault. That wasn't mine. Who broke the news that I'd be assigned as PM RCAS? General Ward called me in one day and said, "You've got the RCAS," and I still didn't know what it was, but that's how I was told. I showed up another day. Could the RCAS be done now in 2011? And the answer is no. First off, there's no money. The kind of money we had is just not there. The other thing is you're not going to see this with the program. If you're going to do something like this, you've got to have a PM there for 4 years. It's got to be a continue. You cannot rotate through the PMs. And the PM has to have the power that I had. I had incredible power, didn't I? I mean, I picked the building. I picked the people. Every one of you either started with me and I kept you, and you know not everybody I started with I kept. And if you were signed by somebody else, I kept you. But most of you, I hired. And the hiring principle was, when you came into my office and we started to talk on the first interview, if you didn't smile in the first 5 minutes, you weren't going to be there.
That was a requirement.
Right. Who knew I had any standards at all? And sure enough. Oh. I wrote a note that said, your mementos. What, did somebody say something earlier about mementos? Oh, Sandy's mementos. Oh, okay, we'll get to that.
What, are you talking about like the yellow roses and stuff?
Oh, yes, that's right. The things that she did. We had so much fun. Remember it on the party, announcing what the party was. When you came into work in the morning, because we'd been at 4 in the morning doing a bottle of Lone Star beer and a yellow rose on every desk. That was the announcement of what the party was. So when Sandy bought the roses, the guy selling roses said, what are these for? And so Sandy explained to her. And the guy said, are you going to have any trouble getting rid of the Lone Star beer? That's, the guy that was a street guy, and he really wanted to help with that beer. At the Coast Guard headquarters. Then the other thing, remember for Thanksgiving, she had the Oreo cookie on the bottom, the Oreo cookie up, and a Hershey Kiss, and it looked just like a turkey. And this is what happened. The women picked it up and said, oh, this is so cute. This is really so nice. Dick Knapp picked it up and went, Do you remember that?
The best turkey yet.
He gobbled it down. The man has no class.
We're all trying to figure out how to do it.
Yeah, all the women were intrigued by that, and then all of a sudden it was gone. Here's the next one. Try to be a little more diplomatic when you tell a 3-star general he doesn't know what he's talking about. Why? How well we used class envy to rile the Pentagon people by telling them we had a spa and a fireplace, and I will talk about that because there were people in the Pentagon that thought we had the Taj Mahal. The meeting that we had in 4th Army that see, the problem, the poor Darms people, because they were lieutenant colonels or lieutenant colonel equivalents, and in each army area you had a full colonel who was the deputy chief of staff for information management. And so that person was responsible for something, but that had nothing to do because it was our team that was doing it. And so that made difficult times. And then, of course, there was nothing about expanding DARMs. So how do you expand DARMs? And they were so there was a meeting that was set up between the 4th Army CG, the colonel that was at 4th Army, and me. And she announced in advance that she was going to, at the meeting in front of her boss, convince me to expand DARMs. Didn't work. All right, so apart from that, let's see, I wanted to do that. Yeah, okay. Now, these are the notes that I made and the things that I want to talk to you about. I believe that program managers are born. I think you can make project managers, but I think program managers are born. This is how you can tell in the nursery. You wait till they're 3 days old. You take them and you drop them on the ground. The ones that cry, you discard. The ones that say, try 4 feet. There's your PM. You know right away. The next thing is you have to send them to parochial school. Because in parochial school, what happens to you there is the same thing that happens to you when you're running a program. You get beat up for no good reason. So in 3rd grade, I'll never forget, and some of you who went parochial school. Okay. Did you have, oh, that's a pretty good number. Did you have same 3rd grade teacher? Sister Mary Mussolini?
Sister Mary Brutus.
Brutus, you had. Oh, she had a twin. She would use a meter stick because you couldn't get enough leverage with a yardstick. Just come by and decide that you were going to be punished for something no matter what. But so not only was she tough, but she was a grammarian. And I will get back to the grammar part. Then when I was 18, I joined the Guard and I was assigned as a company clerk, headquarters company, 107th Armored Cavalry Regiment, which worked out well for those of you who were saying he's going to know what your problems are because he did the admin work. That's not what did it. What did it was when I was in the 220th Military Police Brigade and the 88th Military Police Company in Hampton, Virginia, right, was down to 1 full-timer. Now, if you don't know anything about the Army, but that's really bad. The ARCOMs were full. Everybody else was full. The Army Reserve is the only bucket that fills from the top. And the reason that I was so adamant about what we were doing was that poor son of a gun, that company commander down there, trying to do the work with 1 full-timer. That's what drove me. Had nothing to do with the stuff in the Guard. When I was a company clerk, you did the DA form number 1. The paperwork was done at 8:02. And then you went out and did the rest of your business. But as headquarters added requirements, then it required an automation system to do it. And I kept saying, we kept being inspected. I remember we had an inspection one time. We had a map reading exercise. And somebody from the ARCOM, one of the pretty boys from the ARCOM, these guys, we had a great system. If the ARCOM called and said, we're going to do an inspection, we had a guy that could imitate a thunderstorm. Quack, 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 like, oh, never mind, I'll come the next day. You know, because they don't like to get their feet wet, those ARCOM guys. Anyway, so the guy came in, and we had a really good exercise going, but we had, on the Muslim Day, we had the wrong AR as a reference. We missed it by AR 67, it should have been 68. So we got written up. I said, well, go look at the people in the field. Okay, so my point is that what you had to do is have an automation system that makes up for the fact that you have bad inspectors. Because there's only one thing that IGs do well, and that is breed. There are always more of them. You run some off, and there are 2 more that follow that one. So in order to protect the soldiers against their headquarters, you had to have an automation system that would do things automatically. So you type in map reading, and the right reference comes up. And I used to use that as the other. But also, I found out the darndest thing. I was in there for 5 years, and I made PFC 3 times. Now, I don't understand why a system... The first time I was busted, I can't remember what the reason was. But the second time I was busted, I was the colonel's driver. And the colonel said, the colonel had a debutante daughter. And the big thing was coming up. He said, I want you to take my daughter to the ball. And I said, when he told me, I said, I can't. I've got a date. And he said, I don't think you understand. You take my, and I said, I've got a date. And the next day, I was on orders. I was back to private. I then went to procurement school, which helped a lot. And then the next thing that was important was I got command of the Army's mortuary in Europe, which, as you know, you've seen what the saying is on how that prepares you. But also I had that job as a captain. It called for a field grade, and that was a big help. Then about the 8th or 9th year after Vietnam, I left because I could tell that as a reservist I didn't have much of a future. And Sandy was getting her PhD, and we all know that she's smarter than I am, but I could not stand that she's better educated. And so I had to get the same degree she had, and fortunately I chose marketing. Then I had a couple of short tours. I was in the Pentagon, near the Pentagon, for 2 months, and that's when I learned about the value of lieutenant colonels. It's lieutenant colonels that run the Pentagon. I know the other guys think they do, but it's the information that they're fed. And if that lieutenant colonel feeds the right thing, and so I befriended lieutenant colonels. I had 5 to 6 lieutenant colonels in various places all through the Pentagon that really liked me, mostly because they enjoyed me. Because I was doing what they would love to do, and they got great pleasure out of it. And I would get phone calls at night and tell me certain information, which was a great benefit. Now, the thing you most wanted to hear of all, the nickname story. That was in almost everybody's there. All right. So I was, in high school, I transferred senior year, and we had a small high school, and I was able to play football. We had 60 people in the graduating class. And we had a football team that was bad. Thank you, sir. Boy, I'll tell you. And I was going to wait you out, people. No more hints. But I really appreciate it. I've always needed. Our football team was so bad we did not practice extra points. But then when I went on active duty at Fort Lee, then they had post teams. So you'd go back and forth, and Fort Lee would play Eustis and some of the other things like it. And I played, and I was an end. And I was about the fastest guy on the team as a flanker. So on the weekend we had practice, and so 3 or 4 of the lieutenants that I was with in the BOQ came out to watch the practice. The coach realized that these were friends of mine. So we were practicing button hooks. You go down 10 yards, you stop, you turn, and you've practiced enough with a quarterback that the ball is right there and you're ready to catch it. The coach said to the quarterback, hit him in the back of the head. Now, see, now you may think that's cruel, but only if you're a girl. Right. If you're a guy, you think being hit in the back of the head with your helmet on is funny. Say, okay, so that's what he did. But I heard him. So I went 9 yards. And I turned, and I put my hands up like that, and there was the ball. And the guy exclaimed, he's a star, one of my friends. So Star became the nickname then as a lieutenant and as a captain at Fort Lee. But then I was assigned to go to Europe. And I was going to go to a place where there was a colonel, 3 or 4 lieutenant colonels, and some others. And I would have been almost a junior guy in. And I'm going to walk in, and my introduction to the colonel, and I'm going to say, hi, I'm Star. And he's going to say, I'm sure you are. I'm just sure you are. That was not going to work. See, so I was J. Ronald, so I went back to the Ron, and I stayed there, and that's how Sharon and Harlan knew me, because I stayed with that in Europe and in Vietnam and the PhD program. And then I got selected for the Industrial College, and they sent a form, and it said, send us a picture and tell us what your nickname is. And I said, by George, this is a new career, new life. I'm going to go back to my name. So I put in the name Star, and of course that went through. So everybody at ICAF knew me. Then I went to work for the guy at ICAF, Ray Bell. And so then he knew me that way, and so then the whole crew knew me. All right, so then I get selected for the job, and I go in to see General Ward, and he had other things on his mind, so he didn't react to it. But at about my third week of active duty, there was a meeting at a 3-star, none of whom you know. You don't know this guy. Anyway, I introduced myself as Star, and he kind of jumped like that, and there was a reaction. There was something wrong with it. And 2 hours later, General Ward called me in and said, you can't be called Star anymore. So, okay. So then I went by JR. Right. So, You're always needling. You can never take the needle out, right? Sometimes you pull it out slightly, but then you jab again. But then when I got the RCAS job, I went in and met General Temple, and I said, "Hi, I'm Star Carey." And he said, "Yes, you are, and you're mine." And I was Star after that. General Temple never fought me on that. A fine guy. One of the troubles when you make general is that they don't train you how to be generals. They've got these capstone programs, and they've got all these other training programs on how to do it, and none of them teach you. And I had to learn it myself. There are only two things that a general has to do: inspire the troops and get the resources. That's it. Not the mission. It's a troop's job to do the mission. If the troops are inspired and the resources are there, everything works. So what they do every day? You shake every hand every day. It was the connection between you and me. I wanted you to always know you were mine and I was yours. Every day. I was there early one day, and it was about 7 o'clock, and I walked by, and Steve was on the phone, Steve Coakley, and I could tell he wanted to get rid of the guy he was on the phone with. It was, yeah, okay, you know, non-responsive, stuff like that. So I went over, and I shook his hand, and then I sat down, and he said to the guy on the phone, "I got to go now, the boss just came in." So that was the truth. Okay, so then we had a staff meeting that day. So when I walked in, then everybody stood up as I came in. I was never a fan of that, but I'm going to shake their hands, and it's better if they shake hands if they're standing. But anyway, so I walked by, and there were 2 or 3 people, and then there was Steve. And I went around Steve. And then I went down to the end, and then I was over there, and I heard somebody turn to Steve and say, "Is he mad at you?" And Steve said, "No, he already got me." So right, that was the quota, right? You get one, but you don't get any more. Everybody gets one. Now, as far as getting the resources, I used to prowl the hill all the time. That was the morning that I tried to be with you in the afternoon. And I was out there on the hill. In those days, you could get to the hill. And you could go see Dave Killian. And you could all go see the other people and tell them, "This is where we are." Never got a surprise. Everything that was going on, they knew all the stuff that was there. Or I was prowling the Pentagon, talking to my lieutenant colonels or some other people so that they knew what was happening. All the time, working on the troops in the morning, money in the afternoon. And also, I am one of the few guys that will tell you that we love Jack Murtha. Because no matter how you feel about how Jack Murtha felt about any of the bills, he liked the RCAS. What was my job? Nothing but the RCAS. You want me to worry about something else? You give me that job. You want me to worry about the Defense Department? I'm here. When Gates goes, I'm ready. But my job was the RCAS. And if you were a friend of the RCAS, you were a friend of mine. And you don't speak evil of Jack Murtha. And people have tried, unsuccessfully, in my presence. So, when you walk in and you see what the RCAS is, what was the #1 problem with the RCAS the day I walked in?
No money.
Tell them. The #1 problem with the RCAS.
How hot was it?
It was the marketing. The problem with it was how were we described in the press?
Problem plagued RCAS.
Right. They never said the RCAS. Remember the first year? It was always the problem plagued RCAS or the embattled RCAS. It took a year to get rid of those adjectives. Then the design of the office. So we have in the office where we were. It was bigger, but it wasn't the prestige site. And the other was Dick right there and other chiefs. But you see how it was? Dick was here, Charles was here, I was here. If somebody's got a problem, the point was you come up here, you stand there, and we talk about what the problem is, and we resolve it right then. How many of you ever did a staff study for me? Right. There's no time to do a staff study. We got it. Come on. Don't write it up. Come and talk to us. Tell us what you want to know. But that was hardly ever used because you knew what the rule was. The rule was, the mission was, serve soldiers. If you had to make a decision, and one served soldiers more than the other, you didn't need me. You knew what it was we had to do. I'll bet you, I was so proud of that. I bet we didn't use it 5 times in 4 years. But I just loved that arrangement. And I like the idea of having the deputy in chief out there, because if the rounds start coming in, then I'm back in. in defilade. The same reason for the desk. What happens when you got the tour is that after a while I became untouchable. I had the 4-year tour set, and because we were successful, as many times as people would try to do something else, I was getting to be really hard to fire because you people were doing the things that had to be done, and what was that? But I had an interesting talk with the guy. I was on the job about 8 or 9 months, and this is a fellow that was high-ranking and really knew the system. And he said, I hope you know that when this is over, your career is over. You will go nowhere from here, you will get no job from here, and you will get no promotion. And the reason is that if you fail, then you fail. If you succeed, you will have to have run over so many people. They will make sure you don't get another one. How do you suppose I felt when I heard that? I loved it. There's nothing to worry about. See, if I don't have to worry about anything, if there's nowhere to go except here for our soldiers, he couldn't have said anything any better. And he said, it's all how you deal with people of authority. If you conform to authority, you will not succeed. In order to make it in the Pentagon, you must confront authority. A few things that happened. I remember I was over to visit somebody, don't know who it was, and I walked out, that person wasn't available, and I stumbled down, and Donna McCaleb was sitting over there, and I don't know why, I just went over and said hello, and we just started to talk. We talked for about an hour, and she had worked on the Air Force One project. And Donna's the reason we have the red, yellow, green, blue, and the other things like that. And after an hour of talking to Donna, I knew we could do it. There was just something about the confidence that I felt about this program because of that conversation. I also remember there was a conference in Hawaii, and I was there. It was going to be over the weekend. Reserve components people were there. So I worked at the San Francisco DARMS team and then went off to that. And I was going to give the speech on Saturday morning. Well, because of the time zone difference, at 5 o'clock in the morning, I was wide awake because my body was on Eastern time. So I got up, put on my uniform, and walked along the beach. Rick Smith was there, and I found out later that one of the participants was talking to Rick and said, I looked out of the hotel today, and I saw Brigadier walking along the beach. And Rick Smith said, I'll bet that was our general. I'll bet that was our general. I never wanted to be the general. I wanted to be yours. I wanted you to be possessive. I wanted you, if there were 6 generals up on a stage, I wanted you to turn to the one next to you and say, you see that one up there? Second one from the left? That's my general. I had to do the things that would give you pride in order for you to support me. So then I gave all of those speeches. Now, I told you about the thing with Corporal. I was out. Jim and I were in California Guard, and I gave a talk. You were in the 13th row on the far side. And I was supposed to have 20 minutes, but the other person went long. And I had to stop at 12 because that was lunchtime. So I was down to about 15 minutes. So I told him the story that here I was. Everybody there was Guard. And I said, I used to be a Guard. And then I transferred to the reserves. And the reason I transferred was it's so hard to be promoted in the National Guard. So I'm here to stand before you and tell you something that you've always thought true. And that is, it's a whole lot easier to become a general in the Army Reserve than it is to be a corporal in the National Guard. And they loved it, didn't they, Jim? You know how sometimes when you give a speech, you know you're on? I was as on that day as I've ever been, and I'm glad Jim got to see it. So then, after it was over at lunch, they had me seated next to the wife of the Adjutant General of California. And she had listened to that last speech, and she said, I just thought that was wonderful. I never knew you computer people could be so funny. And I said, oh yes, we computer people are just hilarious. I was being interviewed by somebody from the press, because Sandy was off, knowing that Sandy was at Desert Storm. And they said, how do you feel about women going to war? And I said, I'm fine with that. I object to men going to war. And I was amazed. I mean, that was such a great line. How come that didn't show up? You said, what's wrong with the press? You handle that stuff. I was at Fort Gordon, and there was an audience, mostly advanced course. There were a lot of captains out there. And it was a big auditorium, lots of folks there. And as we started off, every branch of the Army has a color. Military police is green, and so on. The Signal Corps is a bright orange. And so I started talking, and I realized the cushions were a dark blue. And I said, and the place was just newly built. I said, oh, why aren't these cushions orange? And every now and then you say something you sort of wish you hadn't said. They were like, oh, and there was a story to that. I just tell a little kind of rumble that went through the audience. So, but of course that did not deter me from the next line, which was, you know, there are different ways to get your commission. There's a direct commission and OCS, but mostly it's ROTC and West Point. And there's always kidding back and forth. And I said, it's just really, really wonderful to be here in the Signal Corps place because you people have to be really smart. You people have to be so smart in the Signal Corps that you've never had a West Pointer. That was pretty much what they said. Yeah, I would say that. Were you there, Kate? Okay, so that happened, and I came back. 3 days later, one of my lieutenant colonels gave me a call at night and said the three-star that he works for is going down the halls of the Pentagon saying, I have the tape. Now we're going to get him. So he was showing it to the other three stars, and he was getting ready to show it to the Secretary of the Army. This was going to be the proof that I was done for. So the next day, I called back to the school when I got the projection room. And I said, did you tape my presentation? Yes. Do you have it there? Yes. Where is it? It's in my safe. Would you look for it for me? Well, I know it's there. I said, humor me. He came back a couple seconds later and said, oh, my God. That tape is gone. In 1987, when I started, we had nothing but good three-star generals. We had, of course, Herb Temple. And we had your buddy Emmett Page, terrific guy that was so fine and did all the things. Don Rogers was there in the DC-4. Rick Brown, who I didn't know all that well, but he was out in 4th Army. Every three-star general I worked with at the beginning was good, and I assumed they were all going to be good. I had no reason to believe anything other than that. Every one of them was replaced by someone different. And what you learn, unfortunately, that in the Pentagon, in the long run, the bad guys usually win because they are only out after for their own career, whereas the good guys are after the soldiers. And so it's difficult for that. And so I used to talk about the forces of evil. Remember that? Talk about. And you knew who I was talking about. General Schwarzkopf. There was a guy that worked for Schwarzkopf who was the Deputy Chief of Staff for Operations, said you ought to brief him. So I came in, and he sat there, I sat here, and the Lieutenant Colonel sat there. And Schwarzkopf was a dear, dear man. He was a three-star at the time. And he was listening to me, but I could tell there was something else on his mind. And so I was talking to him. And have you ever been in a time where you're talking to somebody, and they're looking at you, and they're nodding, and they're smiling, but you can tell they're not paying attention? It's called marriage. And that was it. I just didn't know who the groom was, but boy, we were ready to exchange rings right there. So then we were going, and I thought I'd test it. So I said, we're trying to figure where to start the fielding. And we have a suggestion, and I'm beginning to consider it favorably, that there's a combined Army Reserve Center and National Guard Army in Tahiti. So we'll probably start there. And then I continued on with the stuff. See, and that's nice. You know, just the dear, dear man. So then a phone call. I came in and he got the phone call. And then while he was on the phone call, the colonel and he smiled at me. And so then I closed off the briefing and I left him alone. I've seen him a couple of times since. And last time I saw him, I said, General, I just want you to know the RCAS stayed on schedule and on budget. And he said, oh, that's such a relief to me. He's a huggable guy, and I called him. I said that, you know, you're just a big old teddy bear. And he said, yeah, I know. He really is good. Oh, this was fun. So we turn in the reports. The reports are those quarterly reports, and how are we doing on contracting and finance and management and facilities. And there are about 6 categories. You turn in green, yellow, red. And under management, I turned in yellow. And the DA MASARC, Major Automated Information System Review Council, chiefs had a fit with that. We don't want to report to DOD that you're yellow in anything at all. So General Temple called me in and said, we're going to talk. So, okay, so you go to his desk there, right, the couch over there. Over here is a table, rectangular table, chair here, 2, 2, and 1. So he was there, And there was a general that replaced a good general there, and I was here. So if you're here, he motioned me, I was it. See? So I sat down, shook hands, everybody sat down, and I looked at General Temple, who looked at this guy. Now here's your lineup. Good general, bad general, your general. Where's your money? Who are you going to put it on? So this guy started to lay into me about that you can't report that kind of stuff. And there was some other thing I had done that upset him. Yeah, I still had not yet fully said I absolutely accept the schedule that was imposed upon us by DIS C4. So at that meeting he said, this is what you're going to do today. You are going to say you accept that schedule as it is, and you are going to change that report. And he had no authority to do that whatsoever. And maybe you remember, right about that time, TM 38-750, and you turned in these reports, and there was a captain that turned in that he had 3 or 4 Jeeps that were not working. And the battalion commander made him change that, or tried to force him to change it. And then it went up to Pentagon level, and the Pentagon put out a policy that said the superiors cannot force subordinates to change their reports. So, and the captain's name, let's say, was Kelly. And so when Bad General said that to me, I said, you know, this sounds like the Kelly case. Oh, whoa. So, you see, that's how you get the 3 stars. You see? You don't say, you are a liar and you're trying to get me to join your organization. No, this sounds a lot like the Kelly case. I said it real easy like that. All right, so then he was trying to get me to change, because he said, all right, if you're saying your management is yellow, that means you're not qualified to do the job. You're blowing the whistle on yourself. You should, if you're honorable, resign. So we kept going, and of course I said I wouldn't. And so then he asked me a negative question. Remember I said 3rd grade grammarian? A negative question, which actually tells the true condition must be responded to in the affirmative. She never stopped drilling that into us. You answer the question the way it's asked. So, okay, now that also how you treat generals. Good generals are called sir. Bad generals are called general. Really bad generals don't get either. I wonder if anybody ever got the code. I just always kind of wonder. They ever talked among themselves? What does he call you? So this is how the conversation went. So then you're not going to change it. Yes. Oh, then you are going to change it. No. I answered every question, totally respectful. And the man flushed in a way that I had never seen before. Usually when your face flushes, it's from the bottom up. Right? This guy flushed from the top down. It was amazing. As it worked down, right here, everything up here was red, everything down here was white. And then it went down. And I looked at him, and you've been around puppies when they see something new for the first time, you know what they do? And that's what I did with him. I was just... I just gave him that look. How did you do that? you got flushed down. That's amazing. So I gave it... here's another critical thing. I never looked at the boss. Because if during that conversation I look at the boss, that means I either want to know, how do you feel about this? Or I need help, or you need to do something. I never let the boss think I needed him. If he wanted me to do something, I'd of course do it. But I did not depend on him. And I didn't want him to be put in a bad situation. So I never stopped looking at him, at the bad general, until about 3 seconds of silence, when the flushing started to finish, and I turned to General Temple and I said, is that all, sir? And he just nodded yes. And then he winked at me. Can you imagine anything better than being in a really tough situation and you handle it by yourself and your boss winks at you? Love that moment. One of the lieutenant colonels called me and said that there's going to be a question at the Army Mazark next. He called me at 7 o'clock at night. He had just found out what the question was. And the Mazark was going to begin at 11:30. It was a question I knew I couldn't answer, and I didn't think any of you could. So I knew, and the other thing he said is that the high has to leave at 5 minutes of the hour. So we're going to start at 11:30. I had to go until 11:55. I had to pad that time so that then he would leave for the meeting, which he must attend. So at 11:30, the civilian in charge turned to me and said, are you ready? Oh, am I ready? So I said, yes, I am, but there's a 2-star not here yet. So I said, he's very active. Why don't we wait for him? And the 3-star wasn't happy about it, but said, okay. So 2 minutes later, the guy, okay, so I now saved 2 minutes. So I had practiced giving the speech, and we all did the written speech. Right? Today's speech and report is on the advancement of, so it took me that long. But I knew that no matter how slowly I spoke, it was 5 pages and I wasn't going to get to it. So the night before, I wrote a page. And I put a page extra in. So I was going along, and it was game time. We had about 10 minutes to go. And I put that other page in. And, of course, none of you knew about that other page. So I'm reading this thing, and I go to this line, and you guys are all, do you have it? I don't have it. Do you have it? Who wrote that? I want to know who wrote that. So all that went back and forth. Well, then, so now we got about 3 minutes to go, and the code of the system is you don't ask a question in the middle part of the talk. So he was obeying the code, but he was getting agitated, and he was moving his feet around just like that. And he was getting disturbed. So I don't know if he was worried about the timing, or he's from Tennessee, not used to wearing shoes. I'm not sure what his problem was. But something had him going the whole time, and the time came up, and he never got the question asked. Do you remember the dollars for Panama? I think you were in the room, I think you were in the room, and I think you were in the room sitting under the wall, and the guy called, we need money for Panama, we're fighting Noriega and we're out of cash, and you're the only one with money. Does that sound familiar?
Yes.
Okay. So, oh, you were there too? No. Oh. Okay. So I said the only thing I could say, now this was a 3-star and it wasn't the boss. So I said, I can't do that. My arms are tied, the money is there, and all this. Well, then I got thinking, you know how you think when you drive home about what I wish I'd said? See, and I said, oh, gee, I wish I'd said this, this, and this. And I thought I'll never get it. 2 weeks later, he called again. Same question. Ah. And I'm thinking, this is why I say the rosary. Oh, baby, we're going to get this guy. So I said, yeah, I've been thinking about it, and there is a way to do it, and that is to make the Panama operation a part of the RCAS. What? Well, yes, you see, the money comes to the RCAS, and so as long as we're in charge of what happens in Panama, then we can do it. And we can find you. I'll do it. When do you want to check? We'll write it this afternoon. And what? And then I said, and I think I should remind you, it's a 3-star slot. He hung up. I mean, he didn't really want that money, did he? He was just buffling me. Well, there was a meeting we went to where they had, are you sure I'm okay on time?
Oh, yes.
Oh, okay. Are we sharing? Is he telling the truth? Okay. So there was a horseshoe meeting, I mean the table. So about 5 people here. Then the horseshoe went down, and people sitting on either side of the horseshoe. So if you're on the inside of this length of the horseshoe, you're in purgatory because you can't see anything. You turn around over your shoulder, somebody else speaking like that. If you want to write, you can't do that. And that's where they had me, was in the middle slot, halfway down on the inside. And you don't suppose I got there early. 8 o'clock meeting, I was there about 7. And I looked around and I saw the name tags. Oh, the rest, this is not acceptable. So I looked around, looked for cameras, looked out in the hall, I went back, and picked up my name tag. Put it over here to the number 2 position coming down. Didn't want number 1, that's too much. But number 2 position and put that guy's down there. And that's where it stayed. And so then I went out in the hall as though I just arrived, waited for the first person to come in. I went in, pretended I was looking around, and I sat down, and I did not leave during the break. And I never looked. I have no idea who that other guy was. I just know that his initials were LTG. I have no idea what the rest of it was. But I'm sure to this day he's wondering why they ever put me there. Some poor captain's in trouble. I remember going to Dick Knapp's, I believe it was retirement ceremony, and he accidentally did not invite me, and I crashed it. Right? And the way you know that you crash a party is you're the 13th person at a table for 12. So I got up there and I said that Dick Knapp used to be at DIS C4, and he was a special guy at DIS C4. During the time that Dick Knapp was at DIS C4, he was the only one there with an IQ of 3 digits. Didn't I? I said it. See, now what happens when you say stuff like that, you see, is at first there's that kind of murmur like, and then people say, you know, I think he's right. You know, it was amazing how often I was right when I said stuff like this. The worst moment was the stripper.
Oh, yeah.
We were at J-Corps, and Rick Smith was there, and began with an M. The guy that often worked with him. Anyway, called me, and what had happened was we had 5 or 6 people in the room, and one of them was an Army Reserve female captain who was married to an active duty lieutenant colonel and thought it would be funny to hire the stripper at Valentine's Day. So the guy came in with a boombox and started to take off his clothes. I don't know how much he took off. But the rule always was that if something bad happened, you called me first. If it was really bad, needed immediate action. Then you filled in the chain of command. But we didn't have time for him to call the 3 people in order to get to me to have it done. So he did exactly the right thing. He called me. I said, don't let anybody leave the room. So I came down and I started speaking in rather gentle terms about, look, people, this is difficult, and if this gets in the press, I've got trouble. And there was a guy in the back, a captain, and it was lunchtime, and he pulled out a pretzel, and he took a bite out of the pretzel just as I was breathing. So there was no other noise except that pretzel, and it sounded like a shot. And it did it to me. Have you ever seen me angry? I don't think you ever saw me angry. Did you? No. I blew. There was a wooden chair there. And of course I had my boots on. And I went up and I hit that chair like that. And that thing went 3 or 4 feet in the air and smashed against the wall. And then I said, you son of a gun. And then I went into about why it was bad to do that and what the problems were, all that other stuff. And after it was over, it was about 2 days later, Rick Smith came up to me and said, you know, that was good. I didn't know you had it in you. I thought that was good. One time, you got to let loose. And the stripper brought it out on me. A male stripper, yes, that's right. I met a guy a couple of weeks ago who was an Army Reserve, and he was on the director of the Army staff, and his job was, once a month they would meet, and his job was to report to the rest of the people on the Army staff what I had done in the last month. Now, initially he would lead with the report, but the director of the Army staff said, no, from now on you're going to be last. We need to end with something that we're all going to enjoy. Finally met that guy. And, another quote was somebody said, what about the Mazarks? And I said, well, I don't want to say the people in the Mazarks are stupid. But I can tell you this. No Army Mazark has ever been postponed because it conflicted with Mensa. I also remember that time when they were trying to get us to have an exact date. And the date they wanted, I said something was going to happen in the summer of some time. And this particular 3-star was just adamant. I want to have a date. Give me a date. And I said, all right, Bastille Day. I loved it. I can remember that when the first DOD Mazark, these people were so kind. I was worried about what was going to happen in the DOD Mazark the first time we had one, because I thought they were going to just all... But every one of those people, it turned out, felt so sorry for me that I had this job, that the questions were wonderful. I remember one was, what's your favorite color? They were such sweet people. They were all SESers, and you just knew that they all wanted to hold on. Oh, I'm so sorry for you. You know, we're going to make this as easy as we can. Oh, you poor guy. 90% of my problems were green, and you already knew about that. We had the pre-solicitation conferences. I never asked anybody about the pre-solicitation. I never said anything about it. I said, we're just going to do it. We're going to bring industry in. This is the way we're going to do it. And we had to do it because there were a couple of people that had to feel confident about the program. And that was Bob Wallace with CSC and Peter Doobie with Boeing. See, they had to go back and tell their companies, this guy is serious. And their companies were going to say, we've heard this before. But they had to have the confidence because they had to have money to put together their bids. And so I had to make sure that they felt confident. And so they could go back, yeah, I know, but this guy's different. And he said it, and we think it's going to happen. But we also used to have a big crowd. Do you remember the first pre-solicitation conference? If you didn't get there 15 minutes early, you didn't get a seat. And you know why? Because they all wanted to look at me. Because all these people had known all the other PMs, and they wanted to see me before I was gone. They wanted to say, I've seen them all. Because they were giving me 3-4 months tops. And they just loved that. Oh, you remember what I did too? After it was over, I went to the right rear door and I shook the hands of the people that left. I was an imitation Baptist minister. I was greeting them all and thanking them all for being there. And what was fun, too, was I had just finished working for a 3-star general at 1st Army when I was with the brigade. 6 months later, I had the job, and he was out there taking notes on what I was saying. How it all turns, huh? Yeah. I love the different uniforms. What was the favorite uniform that I wore with you for the pre-solicitation? The MP one, right? Yeah, so I had the MP one on, and that's when we used the baton as a pointer, right? And if you remember, I went out and I pretended I couldn't find the baton, so I turned to the audience and I said, "Wouldn't you think for $1 billion program we could get a pointer?" And so I had a guy planted out there, and he threw the baton through the air, and I caught it, and I used that. And then what else was I wearing? What I had on the BDUs? Of course, the boots. I had on the belt with a canteen. Yeah, and a canteen cup. And it was time to take a drink. I took out the canteen, filled the cup, drank the water. I had so much fun. It's all a game, folks. The work was serious, but you got to have fun with the work. I told them that ethics were important, and I told them the reason I can prove that to you is that I never won a game of solitaire. And I never asked for anybody's approval for any of the things that we did. I never asked Temple for approval of anything. We just did it, and it went around really well. The competitive demonstration, why was it $30 million that I asked for? It's because there might either be 3 or 2 people in it, and I needed a number that was divisible by 3 and by 2. Nobody ever questioned me. I couldn't believe it. Went to the mazer. What do you want for the CD? I said $30 million. They said, okay, next. Shouldn't I have to defend $30 million? What is your job here, people? Goodness gracious. It's how you say it. $30 million. Then you move on to the next. We went out there, so we had a competitive demonstration. So we went out to Boeing, and Susan Derry was in charge of that. And I went out the intervening weekend, and I walked in Saturday morning, and what were you guys wearing?
Pajamas.
Our T-shirts.
You were in civilian clothes.
Yeah.
So I said, the military people were in civilian clothes. And I said, Susan, what's going on here? Well, it's the weekend. I said, Susan, we're in the reserves. We work weekends. And she said, I guess, does that mean they should be in uniform? And I said, first thing she did was she called B. Richardson back at CSC and said, we were wrong, put him in uniform. And then off she went. Now, what you can do, it's how do you react to that? That was a really stupid decision. But what do? You rant and rave over that? This is a really good person who done one little bitty thing wrong. But I have worked, and you have worked for people that would go bonkers over that. You don't. The nod was enough. She felt bad enough with the nod that nothing like that would happen again. I really liked Susan. I remember the different staff meetings that we went to. I had said one time, we ought to spend a weekend out in the field. It'd be fun for all of us to do something like that and pretend we're real soldiers. And Tammy Pruitt said to me, I don't go anywhere I can't take a curling iron. I had this wonderful idea of civilians wearing uniforms. You remember that proposal? I even gone to this bank, and these different banks that had different people in uniform, and they had lots of different, they had a skirt, they had trousers, they had blazers, and stuff like that, and I thought it'd be a wonderful thing. I don't know, I've seen an idea die faster than that. Oh, man, that collapsed before I was finished with the sentence. Oh, that was funny. They have a program with, if you're general, and after you've been on the job for a while, you can go and talk to them and say, how am I doing? And this lieutenant colonel that runs the General Officer Management Office will talk to other generals. And then we'll meet with you a week or 2 later. So I did that after about a year. And it was time to go see him, Steve, that great guy, Steve. And he said, here's the consensus. You are too committed to your program. That's what's wrong with me. I said, you got anything else wrong? No, that's the only thing wrong with you. But that was wrong with me. The rules inside the building were no swearing, no dirty jokes, and nothing that'll make anybody feel uncomfortable. You all heard it. The problem with swearing is, first off, it delays communication. If the truck won't start and you want to tell me about it, you either say the truck won't start, you say the blankety blank blankety blank truck won't start. It just takes us too long to know what else. The next thing is, it shows frustration with the problem. It says you don't have a solution for it, so you swear at it. I don't want you to swear at it. I want you to solve it. And the third reason is it makes your mother look bad. So that's how I feel about profanity. And then I marry a sailor. There were some lines that I wish I could take back. I remember one time I had worked really long, and it was about 1 o'clock, and I said to Dick, I am pooped. I'm going to go take a nap. You never say to Dick Knapp, I'm going to take a nap.
I don't think she was available.
There was no end to that. Oh. What a lot of people don't appreciate of what we did in the RCAS is we weren't just doing the RCAS, we were doing DARMS. We were doing the existing system and the next system. No one's ever done that before. You take a look at the guys doing the F-35, they're not handling the F-22, the replacement. We had to do both. And we had to do it with teams that had difficulty because they were remote from us. And then we had problems with that because you couldn't expand it. So we got a letter one time from either OCAR or FORSCOM and said, define expansion. And I wrote a letter back and it said, you have something little and you make it big. Love, Star. And Charles saw it and said, you are not sending that. Put that back. So I said, okay, you write it. And he wrote about a 3-page letter explaining expansion. And I kept reading it and reading it and reading it. I had no idea what it was, but we never heard back. They never asked us another. Do you remember that letter? Oh, that was really fun with them. The judgment that I saw as what my job was, I believe that you all should be in a cocoon. The DARMS people, I did not have working too much on RCAS. I did not have RCAS people working too much on DARMS. I tried to be the bridge between them. I wanted you to stay within yourself. This is what I think program managers should be. If you think about, you've got those things on people's desks, kind of an A-frame, and a bar across the top, and you've got 5 strings down, and there's a steel ball down at the bottom of each, and you pull out the one, and then this one goes. So if I had just gotten beaten up, if I come back to the office, then that means the lowest ranking person gets it. A PM's job is to have a little piece of cotton between the first and second ball. First ball comes down, and nobody else is affected. You take the blows, and you move on. And what I call that is the Catholic crust. You go through enough, you just put that thing around you, and they appeared to have gotten you, but they never laid a glove on you. I love the quotes. There was one person that said something about, oh, I see you've got more gray hairs than you used to. And one of my friends, the lieutenant colonel, said, yes, but he gave more than he's got. I like that one, too. And another one was, he may be a loose cannon, but he's always on target. I really did appreciate that. Okay, can we do the slides? This is the day that we knew. Sandy and I had gone to a social event. We're going to a social event, and this is the morning when General Ward had said, you're going to have the RCAS. And that night we were at a social event, and that picture happened to be taken. And so we have that as a memento of that's how we looked at the beginning. Okay, next. Now, this is the one. Did you put this? Somebody from the office made this, and it was on my desk, and it was just a nice thing to be greeted by, to take a look at that. Do you know this next word? The forces of evil. Schadenfreude. And that is when other people take delight in your problems. And that's what you could see facing. There were people out there just waiting for us to collapse. And they were going to feel it. And only that German word describes properly what so many people were hoping for. So you remember the stand-up desk, and I did the stand-up desk because the only way you get stuff done is standing. You don't get anything done sitting. But also, I don't know if you know, but they measure you. They take your measurement like this, from your elbow to the floor. The top part of the desk is the same. They change the length of the leg so it fits you. And so I was sorry when I left because it belonged to the contractor. And Sandy found a way to talk to the contractor. She bought the desk from the contractor and had it shipped to Texas, and we have it on the ranch now.
I had help by somebody in the room.
Oh, somebody in the room helped you? Do you want to?
Entirely possible.
Ah, do you going to name or? Yeah, who wants to take credit? Somebody did it. Thank you, whoever it was. The next one you got to love. There it is. Oh, we love the fireplace. This went through the Pentagon. He's got a fireplace in the office. And people would say to me, do you have a fireplace in the office? I'd always say yes. Well, it was there. And remember the one time I tried to start, it would take two sterno packs. But right above my office was the cold air return. And so the smell of the sterno went all through the building, and it just made life difficult. And so I only burned it once. But there was a kind of a sick kind of alcohol. Yep. So you remember the next one, of course, because that's the one we left you with. These two things came to me. I didn't read this. I got thinking about on the schedule, and the quality and the timing were yours. The budget I thought was mine, because my job to get the money. But you had to do the two things. And so I wanted that on your desk all the time, so that those were the two things that you thought of all the time. And then the other one was you carry in the wallet. And the reason for the not one day is that I never wanted you to be on schedule at the end of the program. I want you to be on schedule today. That's all I ask you. You leave at 5, you're on schedule. And we have our money. And you used to get hit. There were people that would try to get our money from me. And you don't do anything. Once again, for the contractors. If they're out there saying, he's said nothing's going to happen. People, that money's going to be there, and it's going to be there when he says it's going to be there. They knew they could rely on us because of what you did. Here's the pre-solicitation conference. Do you see yourself, Bob? There you are. Yep. There you are, Bob. Mm-hmm. Yes, you certainly did. Yes, indeed. Charles always sat up front, and I loved it because I used to say fun things at there. I said that the way we do the RCAS, and I hired these people because we had Jack, Melissa, and Donna. We're all from Texas. And I said, what we do is the way the University of Oklahoma does its football team. Best group of Texans money can buy. 250 people in the audience, and that's what you say. Now, let's do the next one. This is the letter that General Temple wrote me after the functional description was ready. But I think it's kind of odd. You see the end there? He says, the look on our faces is one of disbelief. Now, I'm going to show you the picture next, but I don't think it's... Okay, let's show it. Now, I think he looks a little disbelief, but I don't. But that's the functional description, folks. That's what you did. Oh, boy. Isn't that something? Ah, and this poor guy had to read it. I had so much fun with Peter. When we had did I say the story about the people coming out more than you thought? No. All right. So Peter said, how many people are going to come out, do you think, from the Department of the Army in order to look at it? I said, we'll probably have one visit by about 5 guys. Every other day, there were 20 people. And one day he said to me, well, what about the one person 5 days? And I didn't have an answer. Poor fella. He had to have people that were doing nothing but taking care of that. Next. Here is Suzanne Lawrence, Miss Texas, 1990. The Texas Breakfast Society would meet on a monthly basis, and she was there giving the speech. She was the first or second runner-up, and so you know the fix is on. If Miss Texas doesn't win Miss America, there's something wrong with the judging. But anyway, so she sat next to me. And she had a fascinating story. At the age of 14, she had cervical cancer. And the doctors said, you got a choice. We can do everything we can to save you, and then you'll not have children. And she said, I want children. And so they didn't do the operation. And she wanted an absolutely charming person. And she married, she had 2 children, and 7 years ago, she died of cancer. But that got me thinking, because what we used to do is to end the Mazarks with a picture of showing different kinds of support. So we went through all the Mazark, and we said, not only does the field want the RCAS, but Miss Texas wants the RCAS. And these people, yeah, I got so accustomed to that look. What is next? So then I sent you people out, and I said, we need to get more of these beauty winners to support the RCAS. So we got Nebraska, and we got Georgia, and we did it. Now, we did, unfortunately, later lose a president because, as you know, Ronald Reagan was the president, and he left just after we started the RCAS. And he loved the RCAS. And it turned out that he was very happy with everything he had done while in office, except for... It just haunted him to his last day. And he couldn't be there when we put the first element out. Now, wait just a second on next, because the relationship that I had with Herb Temple was almost father-son. I had the money, I was the father. But it was magnificent because of the way he would support me all the time. And I just know that other meeting I talked about when the guy tried to change the report, I just know that he would have turned to the other guy and said, hey, I can't do anything with him either. But he found me amusing. And somebody happened to take a picture at a time. I was giving a speech, and this is General Temple off the stage looking at me give the speech.
Oh, God, what's next?
That's right. But he kind of looked forward to what was next. Hey, he just said, oh, that this could be wonderful, but who knows for sure. So there are a couple things that have happened, a couple of news reports that I can comment on. You know about the improvement of the Capitol, the visitor center. That visitor center cost twice the amount budgeted and came in 4 years late. And it was a third the budget of ours. The FBI has a project, they're trying to get rid of paperwork for that, and they're using it so they can be all automated. How hard is that? To go from paper to computer? Come on. They are 2 years behind and $100 million over budget. There is a problem with the F-35, as you know. This is a quote from an Air Force brigadier. The guy says, because the thing is so late, he said it was a darn aggressive schedule. We did it from the very beginning. But you have to accept some kind of delay. There is a Pentagon parental permissiveness. It's okay to be late. If somebody says it's expected, they will live up to that expectation. If you tell people it's going to be there, it's going to be there. And that's what you did. And what I want you all to do is to look around at the team that did it. These are the folks. The great folks are here that put it all together. Look around at each other. Admire each other. So as we finish this off, and you're talking to other people, tell them what a good job they did for soldiers.